Welcome to another episode of Sussex Sport Weekly podcast. I'm Matt Poe, and this week I'm joined by Brighton Hove Albion writers Derren Howard and Frankie Elliott, and Crawley Town expert and Sussex Cricket League umpire Mark Dunford. Brighton have been busy on and off the pitch this week. The Seagulls have bolstered their backline as their pre-season tour of America continues apace. It's also been another week fraught with controversy at Crawley. We'll reveal how co-owner Preston Johnson managed to upset the Reds fan base while the team were busy putting Heybridge Swifts to the sword in a pre-season friendly. We'll also pick the bones out of the club's 9-1 thumping at Portsmouth in a behind-closed-doors friendly over the weekend. Starting with Brighton, Derren. Simon Adingra, who was on loan at Union, Brighton's Belgian sister club last season, he scored twice in yesterday's 2-0 win over Brentford. Have Brighton yet again unearthed another gem?
Well, based on yesterday's display, it looks as though they've found another one. Yeah, he's as you say, he scored 2 goals and just looked really impressive. He's got a lot of pace. He's got a nice nice first touch as well, and he can score goals as well. He did really well. His stats from Union last season were impressive, but obviously it's a big jump to come from Union and then into the Brighton first team and try and compete against the likes of Matoma, Enciso, Bonotti, João Pedro for first team place. But he looks really sharp, and his first goal in particular I thought was very good because it's one of those. It shows that he's already adapted to De Zerbi's style of football, because sometimes when Brighton build up from the back, it's often through the lines. But then if the press is too tight, Jason Steele will look to go long over the top. And Adingra saw that option was available, made the run, still picked him out. His first touch was brilliant. And then an early finish went round the Brentford goalkeeper. And it just looked really high quality. He said from the left and then nipped it into the bottom corner. Really encouraging signs. I think he's going to play a big part this season. Whether he's going to be a Premier League starter straight off the bat is up for debate. But they're going to have so many matches this season, and De Zerbi's going to be chopping and changing for the FA Cups, Carabao Cups, Europa League, and I think Adingra is going to play a big part this season. Very promising, very good.
Would you say he's more of a winger or more of a striker, Derren, quickly on Adingra?
Very, very versatile. He's he can play off the wing, but I think he's probably going through the middle. Maybe not at this stage, but he looks as though he's capable of doing that. But I think the way he was set up in De Zerbi's system, he will play out wide and then look to cut in, similar to a Matoma role or similar to what Solly March does. I think the main focal point of the attacks will be, you'll see Danny Welbeck, Evan Ferguson playing in the central areas with perhaps Dennis Undav as well. And then the likes of Ndingra, and then Matoma, Solly March, Enciso, Bonotti, then they will be coming in from attacking from the flanks. But he's got goals in him.
Albion have also announced a signing of Brazilian central defender Igor from Fiorentina this week for around £15 million. What will he bring to the side, Frankie? It's always good to get defensive reinforcement in, isn't it, at the club?
Certainly is, and certainly a left-sided defender as well. Most clubs nowadays, that is the key thing they're looking for, is that balance in your backline, to have a left-footed centre-back and a right-footed centre-back, because playing out from the back, which is what most teams do, certainly Brighton do, having someone that is strong on that foot, on that side, really helps that build-up play worked so successfully. So Levi Colwell was the man to do that last year. Obviously, that deal doesn't seem like it's going to happen, despite the will in the world from all Brighton fans, De Zerbi, and throwing everything behind it. I don't think that's going to happen. So to get a new player in who can play that position and can do it well, Igor is a very, very talented player. He seems to be very similar to the sort of Purvis Estepinian signing, a bit of a rough diamond, I would say. There's all the attributes there. He's very confident of carrying the ball out from defence. If you ever watched Fiorentina last season, he was regularly driving into midfield with the ball. Very athletic, very strong, over 6 foot, all the classic characteristics a centre-back will need to deal with the physicality of the Premier League. So I think he could be a really good create a really good partnership with Dunk. That, like I say, that balance it will be needed, but also both two very, very strong defenders in the air and physically will really suit Brighton, as was Webster alongside Dunk. Webster used to do that role, I think, very well as well, being both good on the ball but also good at the defensive side. So in my mind, I see him slotting straight into the team. I don't think there's any sort of sitting on the bench waiting this out. I think he's a ready-made first team player, and I think working under De Zerbi, he's going to get better and better and better. I think he's perfectly equipped to play in the Premier League. I think he had a very, very good showing in the Conference League final against West Ham, which he played a massive part of Fiorentina getting there, and was very unlucky, obviously, to lose that game in the last minute. So overall, this is a really, really good signing for a very good price as well, £15 million, which, considering they were going to spend £40 million on Levi Colwill in today's market, that's a very good fee. So it ticks all the boxes. I'm very excited to see him play.
Brighton have been relatively active in the transfer market, I'd say, this summer. Do you still think there are areas that still need to be boosted or weaknesses that need to be solved, Frankie, or do you think that it's all going in the right direction at the moment?
I think for the thing they need to sort probably is a couple more outgoings before they need to look at maybe coming to the midfield area. Looks very, very crowded at the moment, not with many star players, so to speak, not anyone that, oh God, he deserves to be playing, but a number of sort of what would be the squad players. So I think that needs to be sorted at the moment, because you don't want to have a too over bloated squad. No manager wants that. But then also I feel that from that, I feel like the centre mid thing with Caicedo going is a really tricky one to work out, because, like I said, I've just said that there's loads of midfielders there, but there's only one Caicedo who is that good. And then if you lose him, how far down the pecking order do you fall? And how can you bring in someone of that? It's a really difficult balancing act, because we would imagine, I mean, there's still this, I mean, I said it last week, but we're still no closer to this deal being completed. So they might have Caicedo for the first game of the season at this rate. But, the money they would expect to get is near £100 million. So would they invest that straight away into a player? That's not really Brighton's model. Yeah. Would they maybe less fee but more on the wages? That would sort of disrupt the harmony of it. But then they do need a player who's going to be a Europa League ready player and keep them in that top half of the Premier League. So there's so many different juggling moving parts at the moment to what will happen until this deal is done. Then they can decide, do we invest in getting another left-sided defender, because there's not a lot of cover for Estepinian for the rest of this season? Do we want someone that can play on the wings to pad out that forward line, because it's looking quite healthy? But there's still, like I said last week, there's only the Solly March who can play as that sort of attacking right winger. So it feels to me that for Brighton's sake, they want to sell Caicedo quickly, so then they can just get that one to bed and then finish the rest of their transfer window, because it feels like there's a lot more to do. That's only if Caicedo goes. So it all holds on Chelsea getting their act together, truth be told.
Well, going back to the Igor deal, and we'll speak about another Chelsea player now. Will the Igor deal, Derren, have any effect on Brighton's pursuit of Levi Colwill? What's the latest there? From what Frankie has said, it basically sounds like it's looking increasingly unlikely to happen.
It does. And I just think Chelsea want to keep Levi Colwill. It's as simple as that. Pochettino has said, I want to keep him. And it's very difficult to see Brighton actually finding the right deal to get him into the team at the moment. So I think that's going to be a very tricky one to negotiate. It's a shame, because he did so well for Brighton last season. The fans loved him, De Zerbi loved him, and he seemed to really like being here as well. So, but again, everything depends on this Caicedo deal, and I think fans are just getting so frustrated. And you could see it a bit that De Zerbi he wants to know one way or the other, but there's still another month of the transfer window to go. So it's going to go up until September the 1st, and which is frustrating, because if Caicedo does go, how do they then, do they have time to find a suitable replacement? Will Levi Colwill be part of this Caicedo deal as well? So yeah, lots depends on that. And as Frankie said, Chelsea really need to make a decision how much they want Caicedo. How are they willing to let Levi Colwill go as part of that Caicedo deal? So yeah, lots to sort out. But I think personally, I think Chelsea will keep Colwill at this stage.
Do you think, Frankie, do you think Brighton are also, from their point of view, are they desperate for everything to be solved with this Caicedo deal? Because like Derren alluded to there, if it goes all the way up to the 1st of September, they've got maybe a matter of hours to fill quite a big hole in their side.
Absolutely. I think in any transfer dealing, whether it be a Caicedo deal or like the Eagle deal that has just been sorted, a £50 million deal, clubs want it done within a small time frame because it takes up a lot of effort. It takes up a lot of the boardrooms speaking to each other, a lot of meetings, a lot of time and effort into making sure everything's done. They've got football clubs to run, so they want to get deals done as quickly as possible. And then the players' welfare is taken care of. He can move. The manager's got a new player to work with. The other club can work on finding a replacement or get the money in or whatever they need to do. And everyone moves on with their life, so to speak. And these deals, I remember Harry Maguire's when he moved to Manchester United, that took forever as well. And I think it impacts the players' start to their new club life because Caicedo hasn't done a pre-season with his new Chelsea teammates. He still hasn't got to know them yet. If he does eventually move, that will impact his start to the season. That will have an impact on his eventual Chelsea career, which is not a good start for him. Chelsea aren't, Pochettino will be frustrated by it. Everyone at the moment is angry. And like I said last week, the only people that are to blame is the Chelsea board because Brighton clearly said we want 100 million and gave very good reasons for it. I mean, the Declan Rice deal happened a week before. I think everyone would agree that Caicedo is as good as Declan Rice or could be as good as Declan Rice. Fair enough. Ball is now in Chelsea's court. And I think when we spoke last week, we were like, why is this taking so long? Yeah. A week later, from what we're reading, nothing's changed. There's been no new bid. Chelsea have not said they're going to move any closer. Brighton have hold firm on the 100 million. So, and we've got 2 weeks until the start. So 3 weeks to the start of the season, I believe now. Even if the deal went smoothly from here, it'd probably take about, because it's such a big deal, it's still taking another 10 days to sort out. So unless an offer gets accepted soon, we could very much be seeing a situation where first game of the season comes around, the big question will be, does Caicedo start against Luton? Because because these big deals take a lot longer because there's a lot more clauses and things to sort out. So unless something gets sorted in the next coming days, Caicedo is going to have a really difficult start to the season because his head will be all over the place, and that doesn't help De Zerbi, that doesn't help Pochettino, it helps nobody. So it's a real shame because he doesn't deserve this. Do you know what I mean? He's been a model professional. He's not throwing his toys at the pram. He's still training with Brighton in America. It's just things that are out of his control are going against him.
Did we all see the hashtag free Caicedo when Chelsea were playing Brighton? What do we make of that, chaps?
Wow, it's I remember it came about when Leeds were trying to sign Ben White as well from Brighton. Free Ben White. And again, Brighton were, in retrospect, Brighton were proved right in that because Leeds were offering 25 million for Ben White after you had that season on loan, and they had one season with Brighton and they sold him for 50. So it's so Brighton know what they're doing in this regard. And Caicedo actually played for Brighton last night. He played the half an hour against Brentford in the pre-season friendly. And again, it goes back to that sort of confusion because if he is going to play against Luton on August the 12th, he's going to need pre-season minutes in the tank. But in that respect as well, there's also a chance of him getting injured and scuppering a 100 million deal for the club. There was one moment where it was quite innocuous. He went down injured and you just thought, oh no, everyone's thinking, crikey, what has he done? It turned out he just took a bit of someone's hand went in his eye and he went down a bit. But obviously there's that initial panic. But yeah, it's a very, very tricky balance. He's going to need pre-season minutes if he's going to play against Luton, but equally he could be off to Chelsea. So
can I just also point out, sorry, Matt, before you go on, the best example of this, because of the Brighton, the free ex-player like Ben White, Caicedo, with Cucurella last year when Man City were linked with him, Brighton did their normal thing of saying, okay, this is how much we're asking for. Manchester City straight away said, no, that was it. They said that we don't value him at that, we move on. That's how a well-run club, two well-run clubs do it. Okay, you want this player, this is how much. No, thank you, move on. Why on earth it's now become a case of when you see a poorly run club like Manchester United used to do it for years, now it's become Chelsea. It's like, oh, maybe we could sort of move it to here, or we could offer this and offer that, and weeks go on. that's the best example I can give of how a transfer should be done.
Moving away from Caicedo, has anyone impressed for Brighton during this summer series, Derren? I know we've touched on a Dingra, but have any of the fringe players or academy starlets or last year's loanees have they shone?
Yes, yeah. There's a couple of new arrivals as well. I think João Pedro, he's looked brilliant against Chelsea. He came off the bench and made quite an incredible impact, really, considering they were down to 10 men at the time, and he came on and really got Brighton back in the game. And it was he's looked very impressive, and he's going to be really looking to go on the first day of the season against Luton. Mo Dahoud as well. He looks very comfortable in midfield as well. He's been playing in slightly deeper position, but he can play in advanced roles as well. And what I was impressed, what he looks so good is his vision and his first touch as well. He grabs the ball, and he's already, they say that the players see the picture before they have the ball, and he looks one of those. He can just first one touch passes, and he's flicking it around the corner to the runners, and I think he looks very good, and he should be able to help fill that McAllister void as well. So I've been impressed with him. Hinchelwood, he's been very good as well. We've spoke about him before on the podcast. Played very well against Chelsea. Looked very accomplished again yesterday. And Adam Lallana actually spoke about him as well, and said that he thinks that he's going to have a big say this season, and he could be the answer to this sort of, with on this right side with Lamptey's injury issues. He still hasn't played. Joel Veltman as well. So Hinchelwood could find himself, in that right back position, which he seems very capable of doing. So lots to look forward to. And it just seems as though with the squad that they have, the fans are all behind them as well. It just seems a really, really positive place to be at the moment going into the new season. And you just get the feeling that they could have another, build on last season, do well in Europe as well. They've got the squad, and they have that feel good feeling where the whole club seems to be behind them and pushing in the right direction.
Meanwhile, Jeremy Sarmiento, somewhat surprisingly, I think, has joined Championship side West Brom on a season-long loan. Is that a good move for him, Frankie? And were you surprised by that move? I must admit, he didn't really feature, I think, last season because of an injury. But did you see that one coming?
Yeah, I think if you'd asked me before he did his ankle in on international duty, I would be very, very surprised. I think I went to cover the Stoke City FA Cup game in the 4th round, and he was excellent. He had put in a really, really good display and had shown some promising displays off the bench. But then De Zerbi did mention a number of times last season that the younger players, including Sarmiento, lacked a bit of the sort of, I guess, the physicality and the sort of fire that is needed to be a Premier League player, bringing him off the bench in a number of games and not particularly being of that standard. So I think that coinciding with this ankle injury, which has meant that he's missed nearly 3-4 months of football, I think a loan move is probably for the best with the new additions. This from people like João Pedro and Dahoud and Lallana coming back as well. The sort of Sarmiento could get lost in the shuffle if he had stayed, because he's still a very, very talented player, and has put in some eye-catching performances last season. I remember specifically at Goodison Park, he played very, very well in Brighton's 4-1 win against Frank Lampard's Everton. So there's definitely a player in there, and obviously that injury probably has derailed him. So I think a season-long loan, or however long it is, at a club like West Brom, who I'm sure will be one of the best teams in the Championship next season, will probably be good for him. Because I have to say, I think, speaking about Brighton's loan policies, one of the, we speak a lot about their transfer, finding players and bring them in for small fees. I think their use of loans has been excellent. You associate most clubs with loaning out players and they're just loaning them out before they sell them, sort of thing. But we've seen with Adjerna and Alzate last year, 2 excellent loans back into the first team squad. That was an effective use of that loan move. I think Sarmiento could do the exact same thing if he shines at West Brom. There's Brighton have no qualms of, if you impress, you're back in. So he should look at those 2 last seasons. It's an opportunity to revitalise his career, basically.
It's not a worry about. You still think he has a future at the club. Then the loan moves just to get him back up.
100%. If he was at any other club, like I said, it's normally a case of we're loaning you out before we sell you, sort of thing, or we're loaning you out until the end of your contract. And then Willie Q. But with the way that Brighton operate, I feel if he sparkles, which he definitely has the potential to do, I think he got a loan move to a sort of someone like Luton or Sheffield United, who played a role in a Premier League club very well. But to go into the Championship, I think he can really show what he's worth and get regular minutes, starting games, and prove why there's been a lot of talk about him, because he's international. Let's not forget he went to the World Cup. So there's clearly there's a lot of hype there, and undeserved hype. There's a classy player ready to burst onto the scene, I think.
Moving on to Crawley, hot topic for Crawley Town fans has been the club's transfer policy. We've seen a number of experienced players go out, and on paper, inexperienced League Two players come in. The owners met with the CTSA this week to discuss matters at the club, including the transfer policy. How did that go, Mark?
Yeah, it was. I think everybody was surprised that the owners met with the CTSA for starters. So the communication with fans has been lacking, shall we say the least. But they met with them last week, and the main topic of conversation was the transfer policy, because obviously the fans, they seem bewildered by the transfer policy of getting rid of anyone who's played League Two football and bringing in people who haven't played League Two football. But I mean, if you look into it, there are players that have got League Two experience. But Eben Smith and Preston Johnson, the co-owners and co-chairman, they said they expressed their satisfaction with how the transfer window has progressed and are positive about what the transfer window holds. And they said that the strategy has yielded some promising early results. I think people have been looking for them to actually quantify that, and how has it yielded positive results already? But we've said many a times on this podcast, haven't we, that they've got rid of the likes of George Frankham, Tony Craig, Jake Hesson-Tyler, James Tilley. Looks like Ashley Nadesan could be on his way out as well. They're people with vast experience in League Two, and then the players that have come in have all come from majority non-league. They've all started at league clubs, but not played many games. But so I don't think the CTSA or the fans are convinced, and I think they're just paying them a bit of lip service, saying that they're happy with how it's gone. But they need to communicate with the fans more about the transfer policy, I think, just to say what they're doing. But I know what your next question is, so I can go straight into it if you want. I did speak to... I did.
By all means.
Yeah, I did speak to Scott Lindsay on Monday about it, and sort of said the fans are frustrated with the transfer policy. But he just said things change, and change is good. I mean, there's up and down the country, he said that clubs everywhere get rid of players that have played a long time at the club. Fans do get attached to certain players. I mean, all the players they've got rid of, what's the highest they finished? 12th in League Two. So it's not like that. I mean, I'm not going to criticise them, but it's not like they were going to win Crawley the league this year, those players. So why not bring in fresh blood? And Scott Lindsay said that's what they're trying to do at the club. They're trying to unearth sort of non-league footballers that are going to do well at this level. And he said they're not just getting rid of players willy-nilly for the sake of it, was his actual phrase. But they want to, they're trying to improve what they've got for the longevity of the club and able to compete at this level. And they think the younger and fresher players are going to do better for them this year. And we all know what happened last year with those players that they've got rid of. So why not give younger, fresher players a chance?
You mentioned him there, Ashley Nadesan. Is there any more news on that or the potential sale of Nick Cerula? I saw that Nick was on the score sheet against Heybridge Swifts on the midweek, third goal in pre-season.
There's no updates as yet. It was interesting. Ashley Nadesan didn't appear to play against Heybridge Swifts. He certainly wasn't in the lineup. I mean, I know we're going to come on to those friendlies, but after the comments Scott Lindsay made after the Portsmouth game, and then the footage released by Portsmouth of the second half of that game with a few of the goals, we could see who was playing in that half where Scott Lindsay said some of these players won't play for this club again. I'm not putting two and two together and making four on that, but people can read between the lines, and we'll see. But I mean, it's heavily rumoured that Sutton United have put in a bid, £15,000, I think it is, for Ashley Nadesan. So the fact that he didn't play against Heybridge Swifts on Tuesday, I think is a big deal. It'll be interesting if he plays against Bromley this weekend. But yeah, Nick Cerula, I mean, he's playing. I mean, from what I saw against East Grinstead, he was by far the best player on show in the second half. And by all accounts, he scored a couple of goals now in pre-season, and he has looked the business. And he's playing. He could be playing a League One, Nick Cerula. So if he went to another League Two club, I'd be very surprised. I think he should be aiming higher, but he's a player who I think is going to be vital for Scotland this year.
You've also touched upon the owners. Again, they've managed to put their foot in it. Preston Johnson upset the fans this week. What did he do, and why are the fans so outraged, Mark?
Well, this is a funny one because I do feel a little bit sorry for him. Crawley fans are going to hate me for saying that, but he was on a Twitter live space thing, whatever it's called, and it was about music. He loves his music, Preston Johnson. Anyone who follows him on Instagram, on Twitter, he's always tweeting about mainly basketball and music. And I know he sings in a band, and I think he plays drums as well. And he was just on a Twitter live, just talking about some new artists and that, and whether Web3 can create the song of the summer or something. I think the space was called. And so on this Twitter space, Crawley fans kind of came on and sort of under the radar a little bit. And then when the guy who was hosting it was sort of said, "What do people think of that track?" A Crawley fan piped up and said, "I've got a question. Preston, you're rubbish at music. You're rubbish at running a football club. When are you going to sell the club? Wag me out," kind of thing. And there was another comment from another guy, and Preston, and he has come out and apologised for misspeaking afterwards. He did. He said, "Oh, all you're going to get is crazy Crawley fans on here now." And obviously the fans have latched onto this because it happened to happen while they were playing the friendly against Heybridge Swifts. So a lot of the tweets were, "Oh, rather than watching the team he owns play in a pre-season friendly, he's on a Twitter space talking about music and calling Crawley fans crazy." Now, he wasn't calling all Crawley fans crazy. I think we can all accept that, but a lot of fans seem to think it was all encompassing. So he shouldn't have said it, and he knows he shouldn't have said it. And yeah, but he's come out and apologised, which was surprised everyone that he's actually communicating with the fans. But he did it through us, which was great for me. So I quite enjoyed that. But I think Crawley fans are annoyed that it is through us. He should be doing it directly with them, and I kind of get that. But yeah, he within his apology, he did sort of say he understands and appreciates that they're upset with the performances and that they haven't been talking, and he takes that criticism and he takes responsibility for it. So he has come out and said it, but he did ask that the criticism doesn't cross the line into harassment, and there has been some pretty vile comments towards him. I know last season he revealed that he had death threats and threats to be beaten up, etc., and all that. And I mean, most normal, sane Crawley fans know that's crossing the line, and no football fan should do that. But we know it happens. But yeah, they're going to continue liaising with the CTSA, and he just says he hopes everyone gets behind Scott and the players for that and back them this season. But yeah, it was just an unfortunate event, wasn't it? Where he probably, the moment he said crazy Crawley fans, he knew that was it. He's like, but I mean, Johnson, he could comb his beard slightly wrong and Crawley fans would go crazy. So, and he wouldn't be right. So, yeah, it was a not a fun story to cover, but it was just like another thing for the book that I probably eventually write about Wagme taking over Crawley Town.
When will that book be coming out? I mean, it probably beats A Quiet Life, doesn't it? All this Crawley Town stuff.
Absolutely, yeah. I've got all my recordings. I mean, it all starts with Mr. Yems, doesn't it? So yeah, there's a few conversations I've had with him that would make a few good chapters. So it would make a fascinating book. Probably called "We Are Not Going to Make It," I think, or something like that. But who knows? Who knows?
Well, whilst all this was going on with Preston putting his foot in it, Crawley actually did play some football this week. They lost 9-1 to Portsmouth, which Mark has mentioned. They also beat Heybridge Swifts 7-1 on Tuesday. What did we learn from those games, Mark, apart from Crawley Town aren't as good as a League One side?
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, 9-1 is the scoreline, but it was 2 separate games. So the first game was 2-1 and 7-0. Yeah, but people will call it. The club tweeted it as a 9-1 defeat, and that just wound people up straight away, I think. It was a behind closed doors game, so people were wondering why they did cover it so much on social media, and that it does seem a bit odd to tweet that you've lost 9-1 and the game was behind closed doors. But what we learned from it is we know Scott Lindsay is going to be very honest in interviews afterwards. He played a second half 11 that he said that there were some players that will never play for this club again. I understand that there were players that had ducked out of headers when crosses were coming in and just not committed and not running. And I think that really frustrated Scott Lindsay. And yeah, like I said, if you look at the lineup for Heybridge Swifts, and there were a couple of players you didn't see in that lineup. So, and you saw there was, it's like the snowball effect. Jigsaw effect, sorry, not snowball. The jigsaw effect of putting all the things together, Portsmouth's videos and all that, and you can tell who was playing and who probably isn't going to be playing for Crawley under Scott Lindsay again. But Heybridge Swifts, I think what we learned was probably we're nearing what his starting lineup will be against Bradford. He said he was going to play out a strong side, and it was a strong side. There was no trialists, certainly in the first half. And Danilo Orsi looked really good. He scored another couple of goals. Dom Telford got a couple. Nick Cerula again, he scored, and he looked like he was involved in most goals. Kellen Gordon looked really good on the coming on the attack, right wing backs. It looks like they're going to be playing 2 wing backs with Kellen Gordon on the right, Nick Cerula on the left, and that's quite 2 experienced League Two players in key positions that are going to be vital in defence and setting up attacks as well. So I think I think Scott Lindsay would have found both really eye-opening things from Portsmouth, knowing who he doesn't want, and from Heybridge Swifts who he does want. And people would say, some Crawley fans were saying, oh, it was only Heybridge Swifts, but you can only beat what's in front of you. If they'd gone out and beaten Heybridge Swifts 1-0, Crawley fans would have moaned. Yeah. So it's good to see them go out and do a professional job, and for those strikers to get to get goals and start to build confidence before that Bradford game.
They Crawley visit Bromley on Saturday in the final game of pre-season. Could we, and you've kind of touched upon it there, Mark, could we expect to see the lineup who will start against Bradford City next week for the league opener take the field or start against Bromley?
I think we will. I think Scott Lindsay said to me this week that, he said in the post-match to the Heybridge Swifts game that they are still expecting to sign a couple of experienced players in the next couple of hours. And the rumours are that Bez Lubala, who was at Crawley previously under Gabriel Joffe, he was a big hit when he was at Crawley. In 32 games, he scored something like 12 goals, and he was he scored in the League Cup win against Norwich when Norwich were in the Premier League. So if he came in, that adds another dimension. I mean, I don't know where he fits in when you've got the likes of Danilo Orsi, who's playing really well, Dom Telford, who is obviously the main striker. Harry Forster's been playing really well in pre-season. He's obviously coming up against his old club. So I think we will see, barring maybe 1 or 2 players, I think we will see the formation and who will be playing against Bradford on that first game on August the 5th.
Well, meanwhile, Cuckfield remain top of the Sussex Cricket Premier Division, and a washout of a weekend for all teams in division means their 21-point lead is unchanged. All of last Saturday's Sussex Premier Division matches got underway, but 4 of the 5 soon fell prey to the rain sweeping across from the west. The exception was at Eastbourne, where visiting Horsham made 241 for 6 declared off their 50 overs. There was just time for Eastbourne to reply, but after they lost an early wicket, the rain duly arrived, and that was it. With all 5 matches abandoned, it was a case of 10 points all round, leaving the order of the table unchanged. Leaders Cuckfield 21 points clear of East Grinstead, with Preston Nomads 3rd and Horsham 4th. Any more chaps? Anything you'd like to mention that we haven't covered?
No, all good from me.
I would take that as a no. Brilliant stuff. Well, excellent. Thank you very much for joining us, chaps. Absolute pleasure as always. You can catch up with all the latest sports news covering everything we've talked about today at sussexworld.co.uk/sport. Thank you very much for listening, and we will see you all next week.